So, we are excited with another Home Happy podcast. Today, we have a really special guest. It is our episode number 19. So, I am more than happy to welcome here Dr. Rachelle Peltier. Did I pronounce your last name right?
The last name is a little tricky. It's Peltier. It's French.
Okay, there we go. Super fancy. She's a wonderful naturopathic doctor who specializes in women's hormonal health. So we're really excited to have this conversation to bring her on here, to the podcast for the second time. We're gonna list below the first podcast we had with Dr. Rachelle Peltier and also Dr. Henry. But anyways, let's get started. So Dr. Peltier, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, for sure. It's a pleasure. So, women's hormonal health, it's a big topic and a lot of times also overlooked. That's what I find. So, let me ask you, there's so many different symptoms. There's so many different ways that it can be looked at. And so, what are some early stages or maybe some early practices that we can start before it goes too further down the road and then it's a little bit too late to look at it? What would you say?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say it's never too late. It's never too late to start. It's never too late to look at it. The timeline in terms of when women start seeing symptoms, like those perimenopausal symptoms, fluctuates quite significantly. I would say the most common age of onset of perimenopause for women is around age, 42 to 45. And then menopause, which is the full year since a woman has had her last menstrual cycle or last period, like that is the date. So 12 months, so a full year without a period is menopause. But the time between onset of perimenopause and menopause can be 7 to 10 years for women. So we're talking almost a decade of life where women see change. So I'm finding more and more in practice, a lot of women are coming in kind of even before they've even hit perimenopause. And they're just like, I want to get a handle on this early. I want to know what to look out for. Because it's really never too early to learn. And it's honestly never too late to start. Most common signs and symptoms that women report is like, I missed a period, or I'm getting hot flashes, or a lot of the time it's like all of a sudden I'm putting on weight, like right in my midsection. I can't lose weight anymore. So those are a lot of the early things that we see.
And is there a specific age where we should start looking at it sooner? I know you answered there's not really a wrong or late time to look at it. It's never too late. But as a young girl, right, around the teenage years, or even maybe getting some more educational content around the topic, right? Because it's only when it's an issue that people really start talking about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I don't think there's anything wrong with early education, just in terms of hormones. What are they? Like, what is an actual menstrual cycle? Like, how does that work? What does that mean for your body? How do you what symptoms do women experience in a normal menstrual cycle? I think that there is a little bit more awareness around this now than maybe when, I was growing up, because I find for a lot of women who, when you were like a teenager back in like 80s, 90s, and then maybe even in, early 2000s, it was like, oh, you have a symptom of something maybe going sideways, and the first option is a birth control pill, right?
Oh, yeah.
So most women were on birth control pills for decades, even though they were designed as a short-term option, and then they ended up being a 20-year option for a lot
of their whole life. Yeah,
because basically what a birth control pill does is it shuts down your actual menstrual cycle, so you don't actually have a natural rise and fall in your own hormones anymore. So there's no opportunity to even know what to look for, because there are no natural fluctuations anymore.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness. And another thing is, I feel that lifestyle alone, it's not even like taking medication or, anything too major, but just alone lifestyle stress, the rush that we're on every single day. Amazon packages get delivered to your door the next day,
Yeah.
and Prime is on demand. And so there's so much that just the lifestyle alone can be disruptive on your hormones, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt about it that, our lives now, the environment we live in now is significantly different than, even 50 years ago in terms
Mm-hmm.
the internet, access to information, the amount of toxic exposures in our home and our environments,
Exactly.
everything being about like fast and like at your fingertips, this like instant gratification world that we live in, not to mention our food or like the
Right? Yeah.
change in, work environment, sedentary lifestyle, like it's all connected, it's all related. And all of those things that I just mentioned can impact hormones one way or another.
Totally. And as well as on sort of the same line there, the cure for it, or the remedies, right? It's not one quick fix, but it's also all of the pieces that come together that contribute to the healing or the cure or the alignment again, right, of the hormones. So
yeah, absolutely. And this is something that I talk to patients about daily because, when women come in and they feel awful and they're exhausted and they don't sleep well and they're gaining weight and they just feel like really unlike themselves, their moods are all over the place. And usually they're, women who have careers and kids and they're busy
wow.
and they don't have
Yes.
time. The tricky part of treatment or practicing in this area is the way forward isn't through something like a pill or a one thing that I give them to do.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes there are ways that we support their symptoms so they are more able to make the changes, but the real secret sauce is the work, is the diet, is the
Mm-hmm.
exercise, is the stress management, is the sleep, is
Totally.
time outside, is like all those things actually cultivate more potent change than, the one cure or the one thing.
Absolutely. And that makes it sustainable. That makes
Hmm.
it, lasting.
Yeah,
And it's an answer that a lot of people don't want to hear. They
I
just want
know.
one quick band-aid fix type of thing. Yeah.
It's tough.
Um, yeah, no, I hear you for sure. Oh, I think it's a beautiful scope of work. And let me ask you, so usually the way that we help the world or society is also where we had the most pain, right? Generally.
Mhm.
So how did you get into the hormones specialty, right? Was it something you were experiencing and then you decided to dive deeper into it, or not necessarily?
Yeah, so I mean, my practice when I first started, I had a very strong passion for fertility,
Oh,
which of
wow.
course comes with the hormonal
Yes.
conversation. Hormones were obviously very involved in that, but I found that it found me, I will say.
Awesome.
The vast majority of patients that started coming into my office were women between like late 30s and maybe early 60s. And, maybe some of them were interested in fertility support. But the amount of women showing up being like, I feel like crap, to be blunt. They're like, I don't feel good. Like my mood is all over the place. I don't sleep. I feel
Wow.
awful. And then
Yeah.
when you realize, I was like, okay, there's a common thread here. There is a common narrative. And then there's often in those situations a common solution. So
Yes.
when you
Yeah.
take a look at, 50% of the world's population will go into menopause. And it's not a disease.
Wow.
It is not a pathology. It is not,
Hmm.
something that needs to be viewed as like this horrible thing.
Exactly.
But a lot of women don't feel good. And that unfortunately area of health has been neglected for a long time. And I
Hmm.
feel like it is just maybe in the last like maybe 5-10 years that the conversation around supporting women through that massive change in their life
Isn't
is
that crazy?
yeah.
Oh my goodness. And like, let's even look a little bit further to like moms, right? We're talking women in general, but like, let's look at moms. So you have the kids, the house, your career, you still want to bring an income to the house and all of that. The last thing a lot of women do is look at themselves. They're taking care of everybody else but themselves. And so it's an awareness that honestly it does need to be spoken about. It does need to be looked at, because if the woman is not doing well, she can't take care of everything else, right? So
Exactly. Yeah. I
yeah,
have that conversation daily with patients, and I do find that more and more women are realizing that, and they're like,
that's
I'm
good.
burnt out, and then they're coming
Yes,
for support. Um,
yes,
I think the hardest transition is the actual actionable things that they're doing at home, because like I don't got time for that. I gotta drop my kid off
right,
at hockey, and then my other kid
yeah,
at soccer, and then I gotta make dinner, and we're just throwing something in, and it's like, okay, trying to
wow,
break it down into easily digestible bits of
mm-hmm.
work that they can do that is sustainable. Uh,
Yes.
but I call it mom syndrome because I see it all the time. They're looking after
Yes.
their kids and their partners. And usually by that, perimenopausal transition is when women are at like the peak of their career. They've been in it
Mm-hmm.
for a while. They're usually getting their promotions. They're
Yes.
like, really, really into their careers at that point, and a really important part of their career. So that's what I see. They're like, how am I supposed to take the promotion and work more, but also work more at home and
Yes.
be fraying at the edges at the same time.
Absolutely. Oh, wow. And let me ask you now, put you in a spot, but
Sure.
how do you balance life,
Mm.
all the things that we love to do in life, whether that's spend time with our family or the hobbies that we have, and the work in a way that is sustainable and a lifestyle that you do enjoy?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And it's honestly, I don't think I have the perfect answer either. I think it really depends, person to person. But I mean, I can
Totally.
tell you what's worked for me, and it's ever evolving. It honestly looks a little different
Totally.
season to season, but I always have my non-negotiables. And so
Mm-hmm.
non-negotiables are going to be sleep. Like, doesn't matter what's going on, sleep has to be a priority. Your 7 to 9 hours a night. Prioritizing exercise, if that means getting up at 5 to be able to get a workout in before I
Mm-hmm.
start my day, if that's the only time, that's a non-negotiable, so I'll do it. The nutrition side of things as well, to be
Yeah.
able to give you good energy and make sure you're putting good fuel in the tank, that's a non-negotiable. Because sometimes, when you're at work for 10, 12 hours and you got to like fit in the
Mm-hmm.
little pieces on either end of
It's a
your day.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
It's definitely a lot, but I find the balance of making sure that I am what I call like pouring into my own cup so I can pour into
Yes.
my patients. The term you can't pour from an empty cup, making sure that I'm really meeting my non-negotiables for myself. And then also giving myself permission to take the break. Like, I
Mhm.
recently restructured my own schedule to be able to give myself a day or two on the weekend, where before I was working weekends. I took
Oh,
a step
wow.
back from that after, a couple
Mhm.
practice, just to be able to say, okay, I need more than 12 hours to do all the things, maybe giving myself a couple days and actually
Yeah.
being okay with that, because sometimes you want to take off the doctor hat and go sit in the
Yeah,
backyard in the sun with
totally.
a snack and just chill.
100%. And as you were talking about sleep and rest, it's such a big topic. It's a conversation for a different day. But a lot of people don't take into consideration how much sleep and rest will do good to your hormones,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, me and my husband had to learn this the hard way. And now we've been into a lifestyle where it's like, no, sleep and rest is priority.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how that small shift, because it seems so small, it's something that we naturally do. We can sleep and we can rest
Mhm.
in most cases, but it's something so small that will shift so much throughout your day, your productivity, your health, your focus. It's crazy.
Absolutely. One of the most interesting books I read on the topic, was Dr. Matt Walker, Why We Sleep. If you're interested in,
Wow.
it's an audiobook or you can read it. I listened to the audiobook and it was like, everyone knows that sleep is important. I mean, you can ask
Mm-hmm.
anyone any age, like, yeah, sure. I know that sleep is important, but when it's actually broken down into like learning about the health effects and the statistics and the things around why it's important, it's
Mm-hmm.
incredible the impact it has. And that has been one thing I've even found in myself. It's like, okay, if I'm getting up at 5, I got to be in bed by a certain time to get my 7 and 9 hours, right?
Yes, totally.
And the consistency as well, right? A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, they're shifting their bedtime and wake up time 1, 2, 3 hours, depending on the day. And that's hard on your circadian rhythm as well. So
Really, eh?
yeah, so having some sense of consistency with bedtime and wake up time is arguably one of the best things people can do for their sleep habits.
Now, and I don't want to extend this too long. We try to keep it short, but the conversation is so interesting. The sleep, the amount of time you sleep is really important and the consistency you said, but is it also important to go to bed at the same time or very close to the same time every day?
I would recommend that you try. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, weekends and holidays and, travel things come up and it's not perfect, but your
Yeah.
regular, work week, your 9 to 5, as much as you can, you should be trying to go to bed at least 2 to 3 hours before midnight, because those hours
Mm-hmm.
before midnight is when you get the most deep sleep, your
Wow.
deep sleep cycles. And then the consistency is really important, because our circadian rhythms, it's like a clock, right? And if we are kind of jumping around the clock, our body doesn't really know what to do, or like when to
Wow.
secrete the sleepy hormones and when to wake you up. So the bedtime consistency and getting in bed by like 10 p.m. latest is
Mm-hmm.
ideal.
Wow. I need
Yeah.
to go to bed earlier then.
Yeah, most people do. Most people do.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. Like I said, we'll leave all the information below. And for anyone that has any questions, I'm sure they can reach out to the office, to you, get in touch, send an email. So I really appreciate it. Like I said, I will link the previous episode we also had. And yes, have everyone have a beautiful day and we'll be in touch soon.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Thank you.